A farmer found a pipe leading beneath his barn. What he discovered at the end shocked him. Every morning, before the sun even peeked over the horizon, he would wake up to the soft sounds of birds singing and the faint rustle of the wind through the trees. The farm had been in his family for generations, and he felt a deep connection to the land. He knew every inch of it, the rolling fields, the small orchard by the creek, and the old barn that had been standing for nearly 50 years. The barn, with its wooden beams and creaky floorboards, held memories of his father and grandfather working tirelessly through storms, droughts, and long summers. It was more than just a place to store tools and hay. It was a piece of his family's history. One chilly morning in early spring, Thomas decided to clean the barn. Winter had left its mark, dusty corners, cobwebs in every nook, and small piles of dirt and straw. As he swept, he hummed softly to himself, enjoying the peaceful routine. The farm was quiet at this hour, except for the occasional clatter of chickens or the distant lowing of cows. He liked mornings like this, when it felt as if the entire world belonged to him and the land he nurtured. As he moved a stack of old wooden crates, Thomas noticed something unusual. A small, rusty pipe protruded from the ground beneath the barn floor. It wasn't large, just wide enough for him to peek into, and it had clearly been there for a long time. He furrowed his brow. He had walked through this part of the barn countless times over the years, yet he had never noticed this pipe before. Its presence puzzled him. Curiosity bubbled inside him. "Where does this come from?" he murmured, kneeling down to examine it closely. The pipe was cold and slightly damp to the touch. It seemed to stretch underground, disappearing into darkness. He tapped it lightly with his hand, and it made a hollow, echoing sound. Something about it felt different, like it didn't belong there. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it be part of an old irrigation system? Or maybe a leftover from some construction work done long before he was born? Thomas had always been a careful man, practical and grounded, but this discovery ignited a spark of adventure in him. He couldn't help but imagine what might lie at the other end of that pipe. Perhaps it was nothing, just a forgotten remnant of the past. Yet the thought of ignoring it made him feel uneasy. There was something mysterious about it, something that whispered to him to find out more. He decided to investigate further. Thomas fetched a flashlight from the tool rack and knelt beside the pipe. Peering inside, he saw darkness stretching beyond the reach of the light. He could hear faint sounds, like the trickling of water or the soft scuttle of something moving in the distance. He wasn't sure what it was, but it made his heart race with a mix of fear and excitement. His grandfather had always said that curiosity was a gift, but it could also lead you into trouble. Thomas chuckled softly to himself, wondering which of the two paths he would take. Before he could decide, he took a step back and examined the barn floor around the pipe. The wooden boards were worn with age, and some were slightly warped from years of moisture. As he ran his fingers along the surface, he noticed tiny scratches in the wood, small, deliberate marks that looked as if someone had tried to pry the boards open before. Thomas felt a shiver run down his spine. Had someone else discovered this pipe long ago? What could have been hidden here all these years? For a moment, he considered leaving it alone. After all, the pipe might lead to something dangerous, and he wasn't prepared for that. But Thomas was not a man to shy away from a challenge. His curiosity had always driven him, whether it was fixing broken machinery, planting new crops, or exploring the woods at the edge of his property. This was different, though. This felt like stepping into a part of his farm's history that no one had seen in decades. Determined, he fetched his work gloves and a small crowbar from the tool shed. He carefully lifted the nearest floorboard, trying not to make too much noise. Dust floated in the sunlight streaming through the barn windows as he worked, and the air smelled of old wood and earth. The pipe was even more prominent now, its dark opening inviting him to take a closer look. Thomas knelt down and shone his flashlight inside again. The light revealed a narrow passage, its walls lined with stone and soil. It seemed to stretch further than he could see, disappearing into shadow. He could feel his pulse quicken. The air coming from the pipe was cool and damp, carrying a faint, earthy smell. He could almost hear the whispers of the past, the secrets that had been buried beneath his barn for who knew how long. He knew he couldn't just ignore it. There was something about the pipe that demanded his attention, that called to him like a hidden voice only he could hear. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it lead to a hidden tunnel? Maybe a storage space from decades ago? Or something even more surprising? Thomas had always believed that every piece of land had a story, and this pipe was clearly part of his farm's untold tale. As he contemplated his next move, Thomas thought about his grandfather. He remembered the stories of hidden treasures and secret passageways his grandfather used to tell him when he was a boy. At the time, Thomas had laughed them off as fanciful tales. But now, staring at the pipe, he wondered if there was a grain of truth in those old stories. Perhaps his grandfather had known something he never shared, something buried right here under the barn. He took a deep breath and decided to prepare for a proper investigation. Thomas went to the tool shed and returned with a small flashlight, a rope, and a few other tools he thought might be helpful. He wanted to be ready for anything. As he worked, he could hear the soft sounds of life outside the barn, the clucking of hens, the lowing of cows, and the rustle of leaves in the wind. It all felt ordinary, yet beneath the barn lay the extraordinary, waiting to be discovered. Thomas spent the next few hours examining the area, making sure the floorboards were stable and the ground around the pipe was solid. He even tested the pipe carefully with a small stick, feeling it extend deeper than he expected. Each moment increased his curiosity and anticipation. He knew that whatever lay at the end of this pipe could change his understanding of the farm, perhaps even uncover a part of history that had been forgotten. By late afternoon, the barn was quiet, and the golden light of the setting sun streamed through the windows. Thomas sat back on a hay bale, wiping sweat from his brow, and stared at the pipe. He felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. What if he found something dangerous? What if it was nothing at all? Yet, he also felt a sense of destiny, as if this discovery had chosen him to reveal the secrets hidden beneath his barn. For the rest of the day, he planned carefully. He knew that the next step would be critical. He would need courage, patience, and careful attention to detail. The pipe was more than just a curiosity now. It was a doorway to the unknown, a bridge between the ordinary life he knew and the extraordinary mystery waiting to be uncovered. That night, as Thomas lay in bed, he couldn't stop thinking about the pipe. He imagined crawling through the narrow tunnel, discovering forgotten objects, and perhaps even unearthing stories of the past that had been buried for decades. Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams of hidden treasures and secret passageways beneath the old barn. He realized that sometimes the most remarkable discoveries were waiting quietly beneath your feet, in the most ordinary of places. By morning, Thomas had made up his mind. He would follow the pipe, no matter what lay ahead. With each passing moment, his excitement grew. He felt ready to uncover the secrets of the past, to connect with history in a way he had never imagined. Little did he know, the journey that began with a simple, rusty pipe would lead to discoveries that would shock him, change his perspective, and reveal a story that had been hidden for generations. And so, with a mixture of curiosity, courage, and a little trepidation, Thomas prepared to take the first step into the unknown. Beneath the barn, the pipe waited, silent and mysterious, holding its secrets tightly, until the day Thomas finally reached the end. The next morning, Thomas woke up before the sun, his mind buzzing with thoughts of the pipe beneath his barn. He had barely slept, imagining what might lie at the end of it. He tried to think rationally. Maybe it was just an old drainage pipe, a remnant from years ago. But deep down, he felt that this was something more. The excitement and curiosity he felt the previous day had not faded. Instead, it had grown stronger overnight. After a quick breakfast, Thomas grabbed the tools he had prepared the day before: a sturdy flashlight, a pair of gloves, a small crowbar, and a coil of rope. He also took a small notebook and pen, thinking he might want to record what he found. As he stepped into the barn, the morning light cast long shadows across the worn floorboards, and the air smelled faintly of hay and earth. It was quiet except for the soft clucking of hens in the yard and the distant lowing of cows. But beneath the barn, something waited, hidden, silent, and unknown. Thomas knelt beside the pipe and carefully lifted the board that covered it. Dust floated into the air, and he coughed lightly as it settled around him. The pipe looked the same as yesterday, dark and mysterious, disappearing into the earth. He shone the flashlight inside. The narrow tunnel stretched into darkness, and faint sounds, like dripping water, echoed softly from deep within. Thomas's heart beat faster. Every instinct told him to be cautious, yet every part of him wanted to go further. He decided to start slowly. Thomas crawled on his hands and knees into the tunnel, careful not to bump his head on the low ceiling. The walls were rough, made of packed earth and stone, and damp in some places. The smell of soil and moss filled the air, mixed with something metallic, though he couldn't tell exactly what. Each step echoed softly, making him aware of the silence around him. The tunnel seemed longer than he had imagined. He counted his steps quietly, but soon realized it was impossible to know how deep it went. As he moved further, the tunnel began to widen slightly. The walls now showed faint scratches and markings. Thomas crouched to examine them more closely. They looked deliberate, as if someone had used this path before him. His mind raced with possibilities. Who could have been here and why? Were they hiding something? Or was this simply a forgotten tunnel meant for storage or shelter many years ago? The more he thought about it, the more he felt a mix of excitement and unease. Thomas paused for a moment, resting on his knees. He shined the flashlight around, noting every detail. The floor was uneven, and in some places, small stones had fallen from the walls. He could see faint traces of moisture, and a few cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Despite the rough conditions, he felt a strange sense of connection to this place. It was as if he was stepping into a secret that time had tried to hide, and he was the first to uncover it in decades. He continued cautiously, crawling deeper into the tunnel. The air grew cooler, and the sounds of the outside world faded. Only the soft drip of water and the echo of his own movements filled the space. Thomas's flashlight illuminated a curve in the tunnel, and he hesitated before moving forward. He had no idea what might be around the bend. A sudden thought crossed his mind. What if the tunnel led to something dangerous? Perhaps it wasn't meant to be discovered. But the curiosity in him was stronger than the fear. He took a deep breath and moved forward. As he rounded the curve, Thomas noticed something unusual. The walls of the tunnel were smoother here, and the floor had been leveled carefully, as if someone had worked to make this section more stable. He ran his hand along the wall and felt faint impressions, like old fingerprints or markings. Whoever had built this, they had taken care. This was not just a random hole in the ground, it was constructed with purpose. Thomas felt a thrill run through him. He was not simply exploring a forgotten pipe. He was uncovering something deliberate, a secret hidden long ago. The tunnel began to descend slightly, the slope gentle but noticeable. Thomas moved carefully, keeping his flashlight focused on the ground ahead. The air was damp and earthy, and he noticed the faint scent of old wood and something metallic, like iron or tin. The combination of smells reminded him of the barn itself, of tools and old machinery stored down there. It felt familiar, yet mysterious at the same time. Every step seemed to pull him further into the unknown. After several minutes of careful crawling, Thomas reached a small opening in the tunnel. It was wider now, enough for him to sit up slightly. His flashlight revealed a narrow chamber ahead. Dust and cobwebs covered the floor, and a faint layer of dirt had settled over everything. The chamber seemed untouched for decades. Thomas's heart raced. He was on the edge of discovery, yet he also felt a sense of reverence for whatever had been hidden here. He moved into the chamber slowly, shining the light around. On one side, he saw a few wooden crates, old and worn, stacked neatly against the wall. On the other side, there were barrels, some covered with cloth. Thomas approached them carefully, noting that nothing seemed to have been disturbed recently. The air was heavy with the smell of old wood and earth, but there was also a faint scent of metal, like coins or tools hidden away. His excitement grew. Whatever this place was, it had been used for storage, and not ordinary storage. Thomas knelt beside one of the crates and inspected it closely. The wood was aged but sturdy. He could see faint carvings on the sides, symbols that were worn but deliberate. He ran his fingers over them, trying to understand their meaning. They looked like simple marks, but they gave him the sense that someone had cared deeply about what was kept here. Whoever had hidden these items had wanted them to remain secret, safe from the world above. Thomas wondered what could be so important to be kept in this hidden chamber. He decided to open one of the crates carefully. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the lid. Inside, he found old farming tools, rusted but well-preserved, and some glass bottles filled with dried grains or seeds. It was a treasure trove of the past. He realized these items could have belonged to his grandfather or even his great-grandfather. The connection to his family's history was almost tangible. Each item told a story of hard work, of life on the farm decades ago, of people who had lived and struggled and protected their belongings in secret. Thomas continued exploring the chamber. He moved to another crate and opened it with care. This time he found something that made his breath catch, a small collection of coins and trinkets wrapped carefully in cloth. The coins were old, some tarnished, some shining faintly as if polished by time itself. Among them were a few pieces of jewelry, simple but elegant. Thomas's mind raced. How had these items ended up here? Who had hidden them? And why had they remained untouched for so many years? The questions only made him more determined to learn the story behind them. He spent hours in the chamber, examining each crate and barrel, carefully noting what he found. There were documents, letters, and old photographs, yellowed with age but still legible. Thomas could see handwriting from long ago, neat and deliberate. The letters spoke of everyday life, of planting and harvesting, of family and community. But there were also hints of secrecy, mentions of hidden valuables, precautions taken to protect them, and careful instructions for future generations. Thomas realized he had uncovered a secret that had been kept deliberately, perhaps even by his own ancestors. The more he explored, the more he understood the importance of what he had found. This was not just a storage space. It was a hidden history, preserved in silence for decades. The objects, documents, and coins told a story of care, foresight, and a desire to protect something valuable from the world. Thomas felt a sense of awe and respect. He realized that discovering this was not just about curiosity. It was about connecting with the past, understanding the people who had come before him, and honoring their efforts. As evening approached, Thomas knew he could not stay in the chamber forever. He carefully repacked everything the way he had found it, making sure nothing was disturbed. He took notes in his notebook, sketching the layout of the tunnel and chamber, writing down observations about the items he had seen. He planned to return with more tools and perhaps an expert who could help him understand the historical significance of his discovery. As he crawled back through the tunnel and emerged from the pipe beneath the barn, Thomas felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the farm. He looked back at the barn, knowing that beneath its familiar wooden floor lay a secret world, waiting to reveal more of its mysteries. He felt a deep connection to his ancestors and a sense of responsibility to preserve the history he had uncovered. That night, Thomas could hardly sleep. He kept thinking about the hidden chamber, the crates, the coins, and the letters. He wondered who had hidden them and why. He imagined the people who had walked through the tunnel long ago, carefully placing each item in its place, hoping that one day someone would find it and appreciate its significance. Thomas realized that he was now a part of that story, a link in a chain that connected past and present. He knew that his journey was just beginning. The tunnel and the chamber beneath the barn had opened a door to history, and he was determined to explore it fully. He could feel that there were more secrets waiting to be discovered, more stories to be told, and more treasures to uncover. And though he did not yet know the full extent of what lay hidden, Thomas felt ready to follow the path that curiosity had opened for him. The discovery beneath the barn was no longer a simple curiosity. It was an adventure, a connection to the past, and a mystery that demanded to be explored. Thomas understood that sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries are hidden in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone brave enough to seek them out. The following morning, Thomas woke up with a sense of determination. His mind was still filled with images of the tunnel and the hidden chamber beneath his barn. He had spent the previous day carefully exploring the passageway and examining the crates and barrels, but he felt there was more to discover. The letters, coins, and old tools had given him clues, yet he knew the full story was still hidden somewhere in that underground space. Today, he was going back, this time with the hope of uncovering the chamber's most remarkable secrets. After a quick breakfast, Thomas gathered his equipment. He took a larger flashlight this time, a small digital camera to record his findings, and a sturdy backpack. He packed gloves, rope, and a few small tools for prying or lifting crates. He also brought a notebook to record anything unusual. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a golden glow over the farm, and the air was cool and fresh. The chickens were already pecking around, and the cows lowed softly in the distance. But Thomas's attention was focused entirely on the barn, on the pipe that had become the doorway to history. He knelt beside the pipe and carefully removed the floorboard covering it. The familiar hollow darkness lay beneath him, waiting. Thomas shone his flashlight into the opening. The tunnel stretched ahead, narrow and dimly lit by the beam of light. He took a deep breath, tightened his gloves, and began to crawl forward, moving carefully to avoid disturbing the fragile walls. The air was damp, carrying the earthy smell of soil mixed with the faint metallic scent of old metal objects buried below. As Thomas moved through the tunnel, he noticed that the walls bore more markings than he had seen before. Some were scratches, others faint carvings that looked almost like letters or symbols. He ran his fingers along them, tracing the shapes carefully. Who had left these marks and why? The thought filled him with a sense of wonder. Whoever had built this tunnel had clearly intended it to be hidden and protected, yet they had left traces of themselves, as if they wanted future generations to find and understand it. Thomas felt honored to be the one discovering these long-forgotten details. After several minutes of careful crawling, he reached the small chamber at the end of the tunnel. The crates and barrels were just as he had left them the day before, covered in dust and cobwebs. The chamber seemed even more mysterious now that he was fully prepared to explore it. Thomas set his backpack down carefully and began to inspect the crates again, this time with a plan to open them one by one and document everything. He started with the crate closest to the tunnel entrance. Inside were old farming tools, perfectly preserved despite decades of storage. Each tool seemed to tell a story. A hammer with a worn handle, a sickle with a slightly rusted blade, a pair of leather gloves stiffened with age. Thomas could imagine his grandfather or great-grandfather using these tools, working tirelessly through the fields, planting, harvesting, and caring for the farm. He felt a connection to the people who had lived on this land before him, as if he were reaching across time through their belongings. Next, he opened a crate that contained old documents and letters. Thomas carefully unfolded the yellowed papers, reading the neat handwriting. The letters spoke of everyday life on the farm, planting schedules, notes about weather, and letters sent to friends and relatives. But there were also cryptic messages about hiding valuables, secret instructions for storage, and reminders to be careful. Thomas realized that this chamber had been more than just storage. It was a place of careful planning, a space where someone had taken great care to protect their most treasured possessions. As he moved to the next crate, Thomas's hands trembled slightly. This crate seemed different. It was smaller and lighter, yet heavier in significance. He carefully lifted the lid. Inside, he found a collection of coins and small jewelry pieces, wrapped carefully in cloth. Some coins were shiny, others tarnished, and the jewelry was simple but elegant. Thomas's eyes widened. He had expected old tools and letters, but this was something else entirely, something valuable both historically and emotionally. He carefully lifted each item, examining the craftsmanship and the detail. Thomas's excitement grew as he realized that these items were likely kept here for a reason. They were treasures, yes, but also symbols of care and foresight. Whoever had hidden them had wanted to ensure that their value, both material and sentimental, survived the passing years. Thomas felt a deep respect for the person who had done this. He imagined them carefully placing each coin, wrapping each trinket, and hiding it away with the hope that someone in the future would find it and understand its importance. He moved to another crate, this one tucked into a corner. As he opened it, he discovered a bundle of photographs, carefully preserved. The images were faded but still clear enough to show families, farm life, and scenes of the surrounding land from decades ago. Thomas studied each photo, feeling as if he were looking into the past directly. He saw his ancestors, some of whom he had heard about but never seen, working in the fields, smiling for the camera, and living lives full of hard work and resilience. Each photograph seemed to tell a story, and Thomas felt a wave of emotion. In the far corner of the chamber, he noticed a small, locked wooden box that had somehow escaped his attention the previous day. The box was simple, with a tiny iron latch. Thomas tried to open it carefully, using the small tools he had brought. After several minutes of careful work, he finally lifted the lid. Inside, he found documents that seemed even older than the letters he had seen before. There were deeds, contracts, and even a small journal written in neat handwriting. The journal contained stories of the farm, personal reflections, and notes about challenges and triumphs over the years. Thomas realized that he was holding pieces of history that had never been shared publicly. The more he explored, the more he understood the depth of what he had found. This hidden chamber was not just a collection of forgotten items. It was a carefully preserved history, a time capsule of life on the farm and the people who had lived there. Every object, letter, coin, and photograph was a piece of a larger story. Thomas felt a deep sense of awe. He realized that his curiosity had led him to something extraordinary, something that connected him to the past in a way he had never imagined. As he examined the coins and jewelry more closely, Thomas noticed something even more remarkable. Some of the coins were rare, possibly valuable, and dated back several decades. The jewelry, though simple, showed craftsmanship that was uncommon for the time. He carefully cataloged each item in his notebook, noting its condition, appearance, and any distinguishing marks. Thomas understood that these discoveries could be historically significant and might even attract the attention of local historians or collectors. Thomas also took photographs of each item, careful to document them for the future. He knew that while he wanted to preserve the chamber as it was, he also needed records in case anything happened to it. Each photograph captured not just the object but the story it represented, the care with which it had been hidden, the thoughtfulness of the person who placed it there, and the connection to the land and family that Thomas now felt so strongly. Hours passed as he explored every crate and barrel. By the time he had finished, he was covered in dust and sweat, but his heart was full of excitement. He had uncovered treasures, documents, and photographs that told a story of resilience, foresight, and care. He realized that this chamber was a gift from the past, a way for previous generations to communicate with the future. Thomas felt honored to be the one chosen to find it. Before leaving the chamber, Thomas carefully repacked everything the way he had found it. He made sure the crates and barrels were closed, the floor was undisturbed, and the chamber remained as it had been for decades. He wanted to preserve the space for future exploration, knowing that each item was a piece of history that deserved respect. As he crawled back through the tunnel, he felt a sense of completion, but also anticipation. He knew that he had only scratched the surface of what this discovery could mean. When he emerged from the pipe beneath the barn, the sun was high in the sky, casting bright light across the farm. Thomas paused for a moment, looking back at the barn with a mixture of awe and gratitude. He felt connected to his ancestors, to the land, and to the history that had been hidden for so long. The discovery had changed him. It had shown him that the ordinary can hide the extraordinary, and that curiosity and persistence can uncover secrets that time itself tried to keep hidden. That evening, Thomas sat in his study, reviewing the notes and photographs he had taken. He realized that the chamber beneath the barn was more than a hidden storage space. It was a link to the past, a testament to the care, wisdom, and resilience of the people who had come before him. He felt a responsibility to preserve and share what he had found, to honor the stories and efforts of his ancestors, and to ensure that the history of the farm was not forgotten. As he closed his notebook and looked out the window at the barn, Thomas knew that his journey was far from over. There were still questions to answer. Who had hidden the items, why they had been hidden, and what other secrets might be waiting to be discovered. The excitement of the unknown filled him with energy and purpose. He felt ready to continue exploring, to follow the clues, and to uncover the full story that lay beneath his feet. Thomas went to bed that night with a sense of wonder and anticipation. He dreamt of tunnels, hidden chambers, and treasures waiting to be found. He realized that sometimes, the most remarkable discoveries are not in distant lands or grand cities, but right beneath our feet in the most ordinary places. And sometimes, the courage to follow curiosity can lead to discoveries that shock, inspire, and connect us to the past in ways we never imagined. The days after Thomas's discovery passed in a blur of excitement and planning. He spent each morning thinking about the hidden chamber beneath his barn, wondering about the stories behind the crates, coins, photographs, and letters he had found. Each item seemed to carry not only the weight of history, but also a message from the past, a connection to the people who had lived on the farm long before he was born. He felt a sense of responsibility, a quiet insistence that he preserve this hidden history and learn everything he could from it. Thomas began by organizing the notes and photographs he had taken during his previous visits to the chamber. He carefully labeled each crate and item in his notebook, recording its appearance, condition, and any inscriptions or markings he could find. He even made small sketches of the layout of the chamber, noting the positions of the crates, barrels, and boxes. For Thomas, the chamber was not just a hidden space. It was a living story, and he wanted to understand every detail before it faded further into history. After several days of preparation, Thomas decided to invite a local historian to examine the chamber. He wanted someone with experience in uncovering and preserving historical artifacts to help him understand the significance of his find. The historian, a gentle man named Mr. Reynolds, was intrigued by Thomas's description and agreed to visit the farm. When he arrived, Thomas led him to the barn and showed him the pipe that led to the underground chamber. Mr. Reynolds examined the pipe carefully, running his hands along the edges and tapping lightly. "This is remarkable," Mr. Reynolds said after a few moments. "From what you've described, it sounds like this tunnel and chamber were constructed with intention and care. Whoever built it clearly wanted to preserve something important and keep it hidden." Thomas nodded. He had felt that from the moment he first saw the pipe, but hearing it confirmed by an expert gave him a new sense of purpose. Together, Thomas and Mr. Reynolds entered the tunnel. The historian's flashlight illuminated the walls, revealing the faint markings and scratches Thomas had noticed before. Mr. Reynolds studied them carefully, taking notes and photographs. "These markings could be symbolic," he said. "Or they may have been practical, indicating measurements or directions for whoever used this space. Either way, it's a window into the past." Thomas felt a thrill run through him. This wasn't just a secret room. It was a historical treasure, offering clues about the people who had lived and worked on the farm long ago. When they reached the chamber, Thomas carefully guided Mr. Reynolds through the crates and barrels. They examined each item in turn, the old tools, the documents, the photographs, and the coins. Mr. Reynolds was particularly interested in the letters and journal entries. "These writings tell a story," he said. "They reveal daily life, the challenges of farming, and a deep respect for family and land. They also suggest foresight and careful planning, perhaps to protect valuables during uncertain times." Thomas nodded, feeling a sense of pride. His ancestors had been thoughtful, diligent, and wise, and he was discovering their legacy for the first time. One of the most striking discoveries was a small locked box containing rare coins and pieces of jewelry. Thomas carefully handed the box to Mr. Reynolds, who examined it closely. "These are valuable, but their true worth lies in their history," he explained. "Each piece tells a story of the people who treasured it, hid it, and hoped it would be preserved for the future. You are fortunate to have found this intact." Thomas felt a deep respect for the generations before him. These items were not just material treasures, they were symbols of care, planning, and the desire to protect family legacy. Thomas also shared the photographs he had found. They showed his ancestors in daily life, working the fields, tending animals, and living in harmony with the land. Some images were of formal family gatherings, while others captured quiet, ordinary moments. Each photograph seemed to speak across time, telling stories of resilience, hard work, and community. Thomas could see traits of himself in these faces, the same determination, the same love for the farm, the same quiet pride in their work. He felt a profound connection to those who had walked the land before him, as if he were part of a long chain of caretakers and storytellers. The letters and journal entries revealed even more. They spoke of challenges such as storms, droughts, and the struggles of daily farm life. They also mentioned careful planning for the future, instructions for hiding valuables, and reminders to protect family possessions. Thomas realized that the hidden chamber was a thoughtful response to the uncertainties of the past, a secret place designed to safeguard what was precious. The more he read, the more he understood the care and foresight of his ancestors. Over the next few weeks, Thomas continued to explore the chamber, always careful to preserve its contents. He documented everything meticulously, creating a detailed record of the items, their placement, and their condition. He took photographs, made sketches, and wrote notes about the stories behind each object. Thomas felt a sense of responsibility, not only to preserve the history, but also to honor the people who had created it. He understood that he was a link in a chain of caretakers, entrusted with protecting and sharing this legacy. Thomas also began to think about how he could share the discovery with the wider community. He wanted people to understand the importance of preserving history, especially local history that could easily be forgotten. With Mr. Reynolds' guidance, he decided to create a small display in the barn, showcasing some of the items while keeping the majority safely stored in the hidden chamber. The display would allow visitors to appreciate the artifacts, learn about the farm's history, and understand the care and foresight of the generations that had come before. As he worked on organizing the display, Thomas reflected on the impact the discovery had on him personally. He felt a stronger connection to the land, to his family, and to the history that surrounded him. The barn, once just a practical building, had become a gateway to the past, a place where stories and memories were preserved. Thomas realized that curiosity, persistence, and respect for history had allowed him to uncover something extraordinary. He felt proud, not just of the discovery itself, but of the opportunity to honor his ancestors and share their story with others. One day, Thomas invited his family to see the chamber and the artifacts he had found. His children and wife were amazed. They had grown up on the farm, hearing stories of the past, but nothing had prepared them for the reality of what lay beneath the barn. Thomas showed them the crates, the letters, the coins, and the photographs, explaining the history and significance of each item. His children were fascinated, asking questions and imagining the lives of their ancestors. For Thomas, sharing this experience brought a sense of joy and fulfillment. The discovery was not just his, it was a gift for his entire family. Thomas also reached out to local historians and community members, inviting them to see the display and learn about the hidden chamber. People were intrigued, and many expressed admiration for the care Thomas had taken in preserving the artifacts. They recognized the importance of the discovery, not just for his family, but for the local history of the area. Thomas felt a deep satisfaction knowing that his efforts were helping to preserve a piece of the past for future generations. As time passed, Thomas continued to reflect on the lessons he had learned from the discovery. He realized that history is often hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to uncover it. Curiosity and persistence are essential, but so is respect and care. He understood that the hidden chamber beneath his barn was more than a collection of objects. It was a testament to the people who had lived, worked, and cared for the land before him. Their foresight, diligence, and love had created something extraordinary, and he felt privileged to be part of that story. Thomas also began to see his farm in a new light. Every field, tree, and building seemed to carry memories and stories of the past. He understood that the land itself was a keeper of history, preserving the efforts and experiences of those who had come before. This realization gave him a deeper appreciation for his work and a renewed sense of purpose. Every action he took on the farm was connected to generations of caretakers, and he felt a responsibility to continue their legacy with care and respect. The discovery also taught Thomas the value of patience and observation. Had he ignored the rusty pipe or dismissed it as unimportant, he would never have uncovered the hidden chamber. By paying attention, exploring carefully, and respecting the past, he had unlocked a treasure trove of history and connection. Thomas realized that sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries are hidden in the most ordinary places, and that curiosity and courage can reveal wonders beyond imagination. Over time, Thomas began to document the story of the hidden chamber, writing it in simple, clear words for others to understand. He recorded the process of discovery, the items found, and the stories uncovered from letters, journals, and photographs. His goal was not only to preserve the artifacts themselves, but also to preserve the story behind them. He wanted future generations to know about the people who had worked the land, planned for the future, and cared deeply about family and history. In sharing the story, Thomas also hoped to inspire others to explore and appreciate their own histories. He realized that every home, farm, and community has stories waiting to be discovered, stories of hard work, resilience, care, and love. By uncovering and preserving these stories, people can connect with the past, learn from it, and create a deeper understanding of their place in the world. As Thomas reflected on the journey, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The hidden chamber beneath his barn had started as a simple curiosity, a rusty pipe that caught his attention. But it had grown into something much larger, a bridge to the past, a connection to family and community, and a reminder of the importance of care, curiosity, and respect. Thomas knew that this discovery would remain with him forever, shaping the way he saw his farm, his family, and the world around him. And so, the barn, once a simple building of wood and nails, had become a symbol of history, discovery, and connection. Thomas continued to care for it, the tunnel, and the chamber beneath, preserving the treasures and stories for future generations. Every time he walked past the barn or looked at the hidden chamber, he felt a deep sense of pride, gratitude, and wonder. He had uncovered more than artifacts. He had uncovered the spirit of the people who had come before, and in doing so, he had found a deeper understanding of himself, his family, and the land he loved.